Creative assembly balance for Warhammer 3 has been kinda jank since launch, perhaps not shocking info there. Balance for a behemoth this large is a nightmare even at the best of times, and the last 4 months have not been the best of times, but that pendulum can swing wildly between updates and sometimes even in the same content pack. Case in point, look no further than Kislev, which had some really good balance changes, some pretty OP stuff, and an absolutely abysmal unit drop all in one update. Running the gamut here and running for our lives in the realm of the Blood God, where these two lovebirds clashed in the first gameplay reveal almost 3 years ago. Kisslev and Khorne, some very silly armies and super cool units on display. If nothing else, it should be very cinematic. So the Enigma, the red-headed stepchild new to Shadows of Change, is the Frost Wyrm, a unit that surprisingly has incredible animations, almost stunning visually, but it might just be the worst unit in the trilogy, or at least it's really, really bad. I'm not entirely sure what the plan for it was, or why the devs felt it was an important addition. It doesn't really fill a unique role. Maybe they didn't feel like it was important, maybe they were just looking for a quick and cost-efficient way to bolster that pack, but there is really nothing unique about it, interesting about it, or combat effective about it at all. And the stats don't seem terrible. I mean, they're not great, but there's nothing that immediately pops off the screen besides the fact that CA forgot to add wounds. But its battlefield performance in all my games, all my testing and others as well, makes it extremely hard to justify that almost 1,500 gold price point. It does poorly against Cav, it does poorly in duels, it can't clear or even push through infantry, because it doesn't seem to have the mass to do so, and it likes to turn around and expose its butt for rear attacks. According to ODM Loopy, who made the Battle Balance and Bug Fix mod, it has a hitbox size of 10, which is about double that of most other monsters in the game. That means it just gets shellacked by even low-tier stuff in melee, so naturally, bringing 2 of them here with Zarina Kataryn, riding that twin Ice Dragon, Frostfang, Min's Kiss, Ice Sheet, Frostblade, Heart of Winter, and the Crystal Cloak. On the flip side, I really like the changes made to the Incarnate Elemental Beast. Its original design was essentially anti-everything. It could outduel monsters, it could melt infantry, it wouldn't rout or crumble, and it was just kinda OP. Straight up stepping on the Gorgon's toes, better than it in every way. Now it has its own niche, a bonus versus infantry, and it can crumble as an elemental. So probably won't be seeing it solo entire armies anymore, but still a potentially impactful unit in the right situations. Plus, it's one of the coolest looking creatures in the entire game. Kislev Cav got some pretty big buffs too. Glorious Charge effectively doubles their charge bonus duration, lowers enemy morale as if they were flank charging, even when they make contact from the front. So, alongside Kislevite Warriors, Kataryn's crazy new Chariot mount, and the Buy Our Blood passive, Kisslev is very strong right now, one of the best factions in the game. It's just not because of Frost Wyrms. Across the way come the Cornate hordes of Jedi Master Draco, who isn't super experienced in multiplayer, more of a campaign guy, but common contributor to my Discord. This is a Marauder Avalanche, which is actually not a terrible idea. If Kisslev decides to go heavy on the shooting, you go really wide and swamp them with high damage chaff. Volkia, Khorne's chosen waifu, who takes your Laifu, leading the army with a cultist in tow, and 2 hyper elites in the back to anchor everything else, the Hellforged Host and Knights of the Brazen Throne. I see a red jug and I want it painted black. Nasty stat line, nasty unit, but so expensive, it can be pretty difficult to earn its cost back without patient and intelligent engagements, which are not exactly Khorne's forte. So as we get this battle underway, you now have to respect those frontal cav charges from Hussars. They could be decent before, they can be deadly now, and Marauders are a perfect target for them. So we're just feinting for the moment, testing those defenses, but there will be blood soon enough. Gotta be careful with that summon from the cultist, though. That is a dangerous toy at his disposal, and frontal charge will indeed come from the Wing Lancers initially making first contact and drawing first blood into the Marauder blob. Cultist coming in close, and if he had a little bit more time there, maybe gets a Bloodletter summon off, and if you take off an entire 900 gold cav unit right at the start of the match, that's probably worth a summon. Not very many infantry engagements Khorne won't win when you get a Gate of Khorne in and behind an enemy unit. Spear Slapnir ripping through the flank of those Kislevite Warriors, and Griffin Legion getting a downhill charge into this choke point and forcing a big blob, which Heart of Winter will punish quite dramatically. Not an overcast, and Khorne does have spell resist, so it's not just going to melt the entire flank, but will cause some issues as they attempt to climb the slope on this somewhat asymmetrical map. Maybe not tournament viable, but certainly more interesting to look at than Rice Fields from Shogun 2 or Nemotuchena from Rome 2. How many Sabaton references can we fit in one video? Hussars charging down the mountainside, Is that all played out now? I don't know. I'm almost 32. I'm an old man. I don't know what's in vogue these days. We got the Frost Dragon. Ice to meet you. We'll kill the dinosaurs. The Ice Age. Allow me to break the ice. Straight up gorgeous animations. And a whopping 8 kills on Marauders. Killing the game, son. OP, 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 OP. Just holding down the entire flank. Beastly creature. Really do love to watch it go to work. It just doesn't do a lot of killing. We'll see how it does, though. I mean, there is a reason we cast this replay, right? Like, maybe it absolutely carries the entire battle. We'll see how things go. Got the Incarnate Elemental Beast going in. A Flock of Doom. A murder of crows descending from its butthole. And an Ice Sheet slowing down the entire right flank for Khorne as the Griffin Legion make good on their escape. One thing I'd really love to see for the Frost Wyrm is just some kind of breath attack or additional utility. Got the Valkyrie the Bloody in the center, fighting Kislevite warriors, and this is a fight she can take all day long. They do have some AP, but they're not going to be able to hit her very often. She's got a great stat line, and of course a small hitbox, which is really useful when you're fighting a bunch of armor-piercing halberds. And as this spiritual Wendigo wades its way into the thick of it, beware its hellish roar, for it can cleave the soul in twain like Mark, and flower the fields with your gore. In its element, unbothered, moisturized in the center, near that big old palace, Kislev looking pretty strong. Wendigo is really gonna hold down that entire side by itself. But their left has already buckled, Kislev's that is, and there's danger if those elites can get in and behind. I mean, the Hellforged Host, the Knights of the Brazen Throne behind you, rear charging, that's potentially game losing if they have free reign. Apparently it's a snow day in hell. Snowballs being tossed up by both Frost Wyrms here, and a Frost Fang from Katarn canceled instead for an Ice Maiden's Kiss, clearing out some of this chaff and imbuing Frostbite. Knights of the Brazen Throne are going hardcore after those Griffin Legion. Looks like they want to close into melee and would be able to do pretty well in sustained melee combat with them, but ideally would pull back and try to get a rear charge into the Zar Guard. These two-handed scimitars, yeah, that's the perfect target for the Skull Crushers of Khorne. Hellforged Host will be able to break through those Kislevite warriors momentarily. Hellforged Host have now maybe bit off a bit more they can chew. Got Griffin Legion, Wing Lancers, and the Frost Wyrm all working in tandem together in the back lines there, dealing with that threat while Frostfang eventually comes through and leaves a thorny crown of cold to adorn the disembodied heads of this Marauder avalanche. A front line that has been smeared by creatures from the land thus far, and we've got accidental Renaissance paintings, stalwart farmers and the demons from hell clashing in the inferno, Katarn's pet leaving icy poops as it trundles through, Incarnate Elemental feasting on flesh, and Exalted Bloodletters about to batter their way through and link up with the main force in the center, which could cause some kind of cascading morale effect, which, to be fair, Kisslev, with By Our Blood, is able to resist much better than most other human factions in the game, much better than pretty much any other faction I can think of. Believe me, that's a big reason why they're considered so powerful right now. And the Wendigo still pushing its way through, barely taking any damage. Valkyrie the Bloody needs to get in there and start whittling him down. With the help of infantry, certainly a fight she can take, although she does have to be careful. Her HP pool won't allow her to stand and fight against a creature that big without much weapon strength for too long. But with some reinforcements, definitely a fight that could work out in Khorne's favor. Portals opening to the Immaterium. Gate of Khorne activated by the Cultist. Griffin Legion and Wing Lancers backing up, as it looks like the Knights of the Brazen Throne have been completely swarmed and destroyed, outnumbered, and they did overextend into that fight. Not an ideal situation for Khorne right now. That's an elite that was pretty much designed to be their hammer. The Anvil was the Marauders, and the Hellforged Host is the only other hammer they have right now, so the fact that the elite cavalry are gone is a big loss. Now that means the Gate of Khorne Bloodletters are also isolated. Decent use of Spear Slapnir could have been angled a little bit better, but huge explosion in the background. I have not been able to figure out exactly what that is. I believe it's from Howl of the Great Beast, leaving really disgusting flickering on the ground textures there. But for some reason, that explosion only occurs sometimes on use. It might be when the morale threshold is sent over the edge and the unit actually routes. But I don't know if it does any damage, and if it doesn't do damage, I don't know why there's a huge explosion that like drops my FPS by like 30. Very weird. I believe it's supposed to only be a slow and a morale debuff, -8 LD, and I think -25% slow, so I'm not exactly sure what the deal with that effect is. But there is big-time problems on the Khorne side, because this is just a nasty envelopment. Wild Beast on one side, Incarnate Elemental waiting in with that Flock of Doom passive, melting away the Marauder Hordes and the Bloodletters. Remember, it also has magical attacks, so potentially great for killing elite demon units. And then on the other side, the Frost Wyrm waiting in, imbuing Frostbite. Lots of terror for the regular Marauders once their Frenzy passive has worn off, and it's just a complete disaster for Khorne here. It looked like they were going to be able to break through on the right side and potentially envelop the Kislevite army, but that By Our Blood passive, and of course the strength of those Zar Guard with their two-handed scimitars, their bonus force infantry, managed to stem the tide long enough for the main line to break away, and then that isolated pocket was just completely collapsed upon from all sides, surrounded, enveloped, destroyed. It got painful for the Blood God on his own home turf. And when we take a look at what those Frost Wyrms were able to do, well, it wasn't a whole lot. Now, I wouldn't say they were terrible that game, but, I mean, you could have pretty much put any other unit in that exact role, and, like, imagine you have an Elemental Ice Bear there. It's going to do the exact same thing, but more. 580 value, 50 kills against Marauders. Like, all I was fighting was just Marauders the entire time. That is pretty unimpressive. What I would like to see is probably a mass increase so it can push through things a little bit more easily. Certainly a reduction in the size of that hitbox. Maybe some animation tweaking so it doesn't always turn its back and get hit in the rear all the time. Perhaps maybe a missile attack in terms of gameplay design would be cool. It shouldn't be anywhere near as good as the Ancient Salamander in that role, but some kind of breath attack or low ammo missile attack, some decent wave clear versus chaff, something like that, or maybe just extra utility in the form of like a chilling aura. They don't have to do anything super fancy with it. It's just a very bare bones unit right now. It's very boring. It just doesn't really have a place on the roster despite it having surprisingly cool combat animations that are unique to it. So I do think more can be done with the Frost Wyrm moving forward. I think Loopy, for example, in his Battle Balance mod is going to make some tweaks to make it more interesting. Perhaps we'll do a replay with that in the future. But for now, even though we won that one, I have been incredibly unimpressed with its combat performance, and honestly, I think it is a garbage tier unit.